Conversations with Azu Ishekwele.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Azu. And of course, we are the latest brand ambassadors in town, Julius and myself. And of course, we have the man always in the middle of a conversation joining us virtually. Good afternoon, Azu Ishekwele. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Well, it's morning in this neck of the woods. So if it's afternoon in Abuja, it means that we are behind you. But we'll get there.
Yeah, I would have made a comment about where you are, but you are my principal. I don't want to say too much. Either way, our book is still on sale at zoo.media. Please go and buy our book, Writing for Media and Monetizing It. We're all in the age of monetizing and making money off every basic talent that we have. So please, we have written a book, very interesting. Everybody, go and read it so you can make money. So we'll move straight to today's conversation. I particularly love this one. The title is giving me typical African parents. Julius, you want to go? You want to read it out?
It says Rishi Sunak's next life, and it's all over the news. Britain has elected the new prime minister, and he is Keir Starmer. So, just like Azu has done several times in the past, in 2014, it was very obvious, anyway, you could say, what Azu predicted that Buhari would win, and it came to pass. In 2019, it was so dicey. Azu said unequivocally Buhari would take it. It did happen. In 2023, Azu said Tinubu will take it, and Tinubu is in State House as we speak.
Wow.
And Azu wrote this column on Wednesday. Yes, he made the draft of this column on Wednesday saying Rishi Sunak's next life. And today, in a few minutes' time, if it has not already happened in real time, Rishi Sunak will hand over to Keir Starmer as the new British Prime Minister going forward. And that's the title of our conversation today.
On a much lighter note, I'd like to ask Azu, are you the mentor of the octopus Paul? Because your predictions are very accurate.
No, you are dialing back to the days of the World Cup and the octopus. No, I certainly cannot compete in that arena. But I think the headline came largely from a sense that I got following British politics very closely, as I have sort of followed world affairs. And as I said in the column, Rishi Sunak, at the time Rishi Sunak came in 2 years ago, the Tories had no option. They were left with no option but to let Sunak in. But I also got a sense at that time that as soon as he managed to stabilize things, he would be done for. And that's exactly what has happened to him. So it's not really anything. There's no mystery about it. It's not esoteric. There's no special gift that is required, other than just following closely the state of affairs in different parts of the world, and being able to arrive on the basis of historical facts, what the likely outcomes will be. I think even just at the time he was taking the seat in number 10, it was clear that, as I said in the opening of this column, his days were numbered almost from the start.
Okay, so I'm going to take a cue from this British elections. I know it's an obvious question. You knew I was going to ask this question. Mirroring it with what goes down here in Nigeria, I'm pretty sure that you can see the places that we need to improve. But what do you think, coming from this, or observing it from this both perspectives, the British election perspective and the Nigerian election perspective, and looking at the build-up to the election, the conversations, the ambience, and the process, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I don't want to use the excuse of the age of democracy, which is the obvious point a lot of people use, that Britain has been in this game for centuries and we're relatively new. Well, but that really for me is not the point. I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. But fundamentally, it's also important to understand that the British system is slightly different from ours. Okay, so for example, in Britain, you can elections are also partly conducted by post, so you can get your ballot in the mail, and then choose your candidate before the elections, and you are done. The election is done. So the process begins much earlier, and through more than one means of just converging on one day to vote for the different. So that's that. But you could also almost see from the time when some of the council seats were up for election that Labour, again, pardon the use of this phrase, that Labour was going to win, that the Tories were done for, because they had lost a number of seats over a long period of time, that the outcome of the election was already foretold even before the final votes were cast by 10 p.m. yesterday. Of course, also Britain is a much smaller country. The system of voting is a much smaller country in terms of size, but it's not just only about size. As I said, they have also grown from many decades of improving on the system. So, and also, unlike what you have in Nigeria, where certain places, I mean, there's hardly any, I mean, voting is also conducted during office hours and workdays. So the whole country does not have to shut down because of having elections. In Nigeria also, the fundamental difference we have to keep in mind between the UK and Nigeria is that while you have an electoral management body in Nigeria that is actually the repository of everything it deals with, apart from dealing with all that it has to deal with on election day, dealing with security, it also deals with logistics. It tries to, there's so much that we have invested in one electoral management body to do that, and it's not exactly the same in the UK. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to take some of these lessons and with the benefit of technology, improve our electoral system over time. We have made, I'm not one to say that nothing has been done in Nigeria, no progress has been made, but there's still a lot more that we can do, at least taking advantage of technology to improve how how elections are conducted in the country.
Your column raises a critical question of identity politics. And if you look at the margin of victory between the Labour and the Tories, it's so wide. Rishi Sunak did well. You mean recovering the economy from the mess that distrust left behind for him?
Yes.
Why do you think he made a mistake in calling early elections?
I think he did, but you see, the reason, I also suspect that the reason why he called the elections is that his party was already bleeding. He was also losing control of his party really fast. So he thought he needed to do something that will help him regain control of his party, maybe impose some level of party discipline. That obviously was the reason why he called the elections. But in terms of performance, I mean, I do agree with you that the British economy is not where it was in 2022 when he took over. The economy really at that time was tanking as a result of several factors. Of course, COVID-19 being one of the principal reasons at that time. But on top of that was also the catastrophic management of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was just, he's a congenital liar and an incompetent man. And these are not my words. I mean, that's just who he is.
Trump.
But yes, but they just loved him for all the show that he was, all over the place at that time. But so after Boris Johnson, the natural person, especially given the role that he played in the COVID, was then the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was of course Rishi Sunak. You expected that Sunak will come in, but no, they didn't put Sunak because they obviously wanted a blue-blooded British person to continue in that line, and that was of course how they had another. It was just like a compounding circle of disaster. Then they brought Liz Truss, who didn't quite frankly know her left from her right, and she didn't pretend that she did anyway. So when they were left with absolutely no option, then they had to exhume Rishi Sunak, and all kinds of things from the beginning about, oh, he's too rich, his wife is too rich, tax and all of that. He's a rich kid, he's out of touch, blah blah blah. Well, these things also, as I said, in a way, there were racial undertones, obviously, in all of these things. Because of course, Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London, and then you had the gentleman in Scotland also, Yusuf, and then there appears to be that resurgence of the Indian Pakistani, the British Indian Pakistani. They are, of course, a force already in the economy, but that inevitably will also lead to a certain amount of political control, which the establishment was not ready to tolerate. So it's a medley of a number of factors. Yes, I agree with you completely. Identity politics is certainly one of the reasons why he had to go the way he did.
Okay, so finally from me, I'm going to quote your piece. It says, Africa will not share the tear at his departure. The continent owes him nothing. So of all the articles that you've written, I think this particular one stands out because of his basketballs. I know when I would say something, you will say, oh, that's the general stuff that's out there. The congenital failure part got me reeling. Because yes, I've heard it before, but hearing you saying it again and thinking about you saying it in your own words while I was reading it, I literally burst into laughter. And the people around me were asking me, what's going on? I say, you won't understand. Go and check out today's article. But really, apart from the whole immigration situation, which Nigerians can be very sensitive about, because the NHS was like a lifeline to us down here in Nigeria, talking about the COS and the care workers and the experience route for Nigerian professionals, Nigerian medical professionals. Aside that, what makes you think Africa will not miss him? Instead, it's going to be a massive celebration down here.
Well, because he never thought much of the continent, except of course when he was discussing repatriating folks from to Rwanda from the English Channel. I think there's this mentality, what some people call the house boy, the slave mentality. I mean, why? I know that he had his own problems, all right? I mean, post-COVID, they've been dealing with the British economy, all kinds of wild strikes by labor, and the problem with the NHS, lots of problems that they had to deal with. But for God's sake, this guy was born here on the continent in 1980, and his parents were here and immigrated to Britain in the 1960s, were Indian Pakistanis. And you would think that with all that the continent is dealing with, he would offer the continent more than repatriating people from. No. I mean, I don't think that the continent owes. We will forget him as quickly as when he took that seat, because he did nothing for the continent, and therefore the continent owes him nothing. He cannot expect. I'm sure that Rishi Sunak does not expect to reap where he has not sown. I'm sure that he's smart enough to know that we owe him nothing. And let's move to the next guy. Let's see what Sir Kestama is going to do. But let me say this, Azuka, before, because you said that was your last point. Kestama, 2 years, and all the excitement about Kestama, because the record of performance of Kestama up to now does not show that, beyond the euphoria of, you see, the thing about people staying in one place for a long time is that people become familiar. Okay, so you are partly also a victim of overstay or long stay, and people just want change, sometimes for the sake of it. But they will find out sooner than later. And mark my words, I'm not saying this from any point of any benefit of clairvoyance, but if you go and see what Kestama has done, of course he was a DPP, he's done a bit in human rights, but beyond that, the British economy and where Britain is in the world today requires somebody who has far deeper knowledge of world affairs and of the economy to be able to really, truly, deeply get the country out of the woods. They will find out sooner than later that they just may have bought themselves another lemon, but we'll wait and see.
The British media seem very impatient. They can't wait to see Rishi Sunak's back. I saw a headline in the Daily Mail that says broken Rishi Sunak arrives London, blah blah blah, this morning. And
They'll be all right.
It ends on an optimistic note that perhaps
Rishi Sunak is the death of Rishi Sunak is exaggerated. Rishi Sunak is rich, as you know, he's rich. He is smart. All right. He's not going to go, there might be a resurrection morning for him sooner than most people expect. How that resurrection is going to happen, we'll wait and see. But I tell you, Rishi Sunak is too smart, too rich, too well connected, too wise in the ways of the world to go away, to die and not to rise again. Just watch. There will be a resurrection morning for him. When that is going to be, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, for more of this very interesting conversation, visit us at azuishekwene.com and for our book at azu.media. Thank you for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me, Julius.
Thank you, Azuka, for hosting.
Thank you, Julius. Have a great week.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.